In the perpetually grey town of Derry, Maine, where shadows clung to street corners like old ghosts, a new evil arrived. It came in a small, unassuming package, delivered to a thrift store already filled with forgotten memories. Inside was a good guy doll, its plastic eyes wide with a manufactured innocence that hid a soul black with malice. This was Chucky, and he was a long way from home. Derry was Pennywise territory. The ancient, shape-shifting entity had slumbered for 27 years, and now it was stirring. It sensed a new presence, a different kind of fear, one that was small, sharp, and brutally direct. Intrigued, Pennywise decided to investigate. It took the form of a bright red balloon, bobbing gently against the grimy window of the thrift store, a silent invitation. Chucky saw the balloon. He felt the pull, a call from something ancient and powerful. Tearing himself out of his box with a familiar grunt, he waddled to the door. As he stepped outside, the balloon popped, and standing there, in the form of a garish, smiling clown, was Pennywise. "Well, hello there, little fella." Pennywise's voice was a syrupy mix of amusement and menace. "Lost, are we?" Chucky just grinned, his stitched-up face a grotesque mask of glee. "Not anymore," he rasped. "Looks like I just found the party." And so began the unholiest of friendships. They were a study in contrasts. Pennywise was a master of psychological terror, feeding on the deepest, most primal fears of its victims. It loved the slow burn, the creeping dread that turned a child's bedroom into a place of nightmares. Chucky, on the other hand, was all about visceral, in-your-face mayhem. He was a force of pure, chaotic violence, finding joy in the simple, bloody act of the kill. Their first joint venture was a masterpiece of collaborative horror. They found a group of teenagers daring each other to explore the abandoned Neibolt house. Pennywise went to work on their minds, projecting images of their worst fears, spiders crawling from their mouths, their parents' disappointed faces morphing into monstrous visages. As the teens scattered in terror, their minds unraveling, Chucky burst from the shadows, a tiny, giggling whirlwind of sharp plastic and sharper steel. He was the physical punctuation to Pennywise's psychological sentence. The screams that night were a symphony to them both. They would spend hours in the sewers, Pennywise's lair, sharing stories. Pennywise would describe the exquisite taste of a child's terror, the way it seasoned the soul. Chucky would cackle, recounting the look of shock on a victim's face as his small form lunged from the darkness. "You see," Pennywise would explain, swirling a hand through the murky water, "fear is an art. It must be cultivated, nurtured. It's about the anticipation, the slow unraveling of sanity." Chucky would scoff, polishing his knife. "Nah, pal. It's about the punchline. And my punchline's a killer." Their bond was forged in shared sadism. They were the only ones who truly understood each other's craft. But with understanding came rivalry. It started subtly. A slight from Pennywise about Chucky's methods being crude. A jab from Chucky that Pennywise was all talk and no show. The professional respect began to curdle into competitive jealousy. Who was the true master of fear? The town of Derry became their arena. Pennywise decided to prove its superiority through a grand, elaborate scare. It targeted the town's annual summer festival, a place of joy and light. It planned to turn the Ferris wheel into a carousel of nightmares, to make the funhouse mirrors reflect not just distorted bodies, but shattered souls. It was to be a symphony of terror, conducted by a master. Chucky, however, had no patience for symphonies. He wanted a mosh pit. Learning of Pennywise's plan, he decided to sabotage it, to show that his direct, brutal approach was more effective. While Pennywise was busy weaving intricate illusions, warping the perceptions of the festivalgoers, Chucky went straight for the mechanics. He scurried into the control booth of the Ferris wheel, a maniacal glint in his plastic eyes. As the sun set, Pennywise began its performance. The calliope music of the carousel twisted into a discordant dirge. Cotton candy turned into writhing nests of spiders in the hands of terrified children. People started screaming, running, lost in their own personal hells. Pennywise savored it, floating above the chaos in its clown form, drinking in the fear. But then, a new sound cut through the pandemonium. A grinding, metallic shriek. Chucky had done his work. The Ferris wheel, instead of just showing people their fears, broke from its moorings. It rolled, a giant, unstoppable wheel of steel and screaming humanity, directly through the festival grounds, crushing stalls, attractions, and everything in its path. The fear Pennywise had so carefully cultivated was instantly replaced by raw, primal panic. Pennywise was furious. This wasn't art. This was a mess. It was brute force, an amateur's work. It descended from the sky, its face contorted with rage, its smile gone, replaced by rows of needle-sharp teeth. "You ruined it," it shrieked, its voice echoing with the power of 1,000,000 tormented souls. "You turned my masterpiece into a demolition derby." Chucky stood amidst the wreckage, laughing. "Your masterpiece was boring, pal. You gotta give the people what they want, a little action." He held up his knife. "My way is faster. And way more fun." The two icons of horror faced each other, the flickering lights of the burning festival grounds dancing in their eyes. The friendship was over. The rivalry had just begun. Their conflict escalated, turning Derry into a living nightmare. Pennywise would trap a victim in a labyrinth of their own mind, only for Chucky to pop out of a closet and end the game prematurely with a knife to the ankle. Chucky would stalk a family, ready for a home invasion, only to find the house already transformed by Pennywise into a surreal, non-Euclidean nightmare from which there was no escape. They were actively sabotaging each other, their pride as artists of fear on the line. The town's fear, once a delicacy for Pennywise, was now tainted with the chaotic, messy flavor of Chucky's mayhem. It was like a gourmet chef having his Michelin star meal doused in ketchup. The final confrontation took place where it all began, the sewers. "This town isn't big enough for the both of us," Chucky growled, his tiny frame silhouetted against the dripping archway. Pennywise materialized before him, shifting through a dozen forms of terror, a giant spider, a leper, a twisted version of Chucky himself, before settling back into the clown. "This has always been my stage," Pennywise boomed. "You are merely a loud, uninvited guest." The battle was not one of physical strength, but of philosophy. As they fought, their true natures were laid bare. Pennywise was cosmic, ancient, and fundamentally alien. It saw fear as sustenance, a necessary part of its existence. Chucky was deeply, horribly human. He was born of mortal rage, a serial killer's soul trapped in plastic, and he killed for the sheer, human joy of it. In the end, there could be no winner. Their methods were too different, their goals fundamentally incompatible. They were two sides of the same horrifying coin, the cosmic dread and the slasher's blade. As the first light of dawn pierced the gloom of the sewer grate, they reached a bitter truce. Chucky, bored with the damp and the philosophical debates, decided to move on. "This town's a snooze fest anyway," he lied, nursing his bruised ego. "I need a place with a bit more action." Pennywise watched him go, a slow, menacing smile returning to its face. It didn't need to defeat the doll. Chucky would eventually be destroyed by his own recklessness. But Pennywise was eternal. It would wait. It would sleep. And in another 27 years, it would rise again, ready to feast on the fears of a new generation, its artistry undisturbed. The clown had the one thing the doll never would: time. And in the art of fear, patience is the cruelest tool of all. Thank you so much for watching. What a wild ride, right? Who do you think would really win in a fight? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you love horror mashups like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next nightmare. See you next time.